Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a trip back to Hogwarts, but maybe not the wizarding world you remember.
Not quite.
We're stepping into the early drafts, the cutting room floor, and looking at the really intense creative decisions J.K. Rowling had to make before the final ink dried.
That's so true.
Right.
When you get into a world as complex as Harry Potter, it's easy to just assume the story we got was, inevitable.
Right.
But you forget the sheer challenge of fitting all these huge backstories and plots across 7 books. You have to keep the tension just right. Every decision was a battle.
A battle where a lot of really fascinating stuff got left behind.
Or completely reworked.
Yes, exactly. So our mission today is a deep dive into that lost lore. We're looking at 10 major cuts. We're talking characters who were too powerful for the plot, totally different family dynamics, betrayals that would have just changed the entire emotional core of the story. We want to show you the road not taken. A shortcut, really, to being truly well-informed about how this series was built and sometimes how it was brutally taken apart and rebuilt.
Let's start with the decisions that were, I think, most clearly made to protect the narrative, to protect the tension.
Okay.
In a world with magic, you are always fighting against giving your heroes too many easy answers.
Because if they have all the answers, there's no struggle.
No struggle, no drama, it's gone instantly.
So let's dive into the first one, which is a perfect, almost painful example of that. We're talking about the overpowered seer.
Yes, a character originally named Mopsis.
Mopsis. And that name comes from Greek mythology.
It does. A prophet who, funnily enough, died after meeting a seer who was better than him. So Rowling was pulling from the classics, as she often does.
But Mopsis himself was the problem.
He was a huge problem.
Yeah.
Because he was just too good. He was a blind wizard, gifted with true mythological sight, and he could give you consistent, accurate predictions about the future.
Yeah, the second I hear consistent fortune teller, the entire plot of a 7-book mystery just vanishes.
It's gone.
Harry could just go to him and say, "Hey, Mopsis, what are the next 3 Horcruxes and where can I find them?"
Exactly. The whole quest becomes a quick checklist.
Yeah.
There's no mystery, no danger, no story, really. Mopsis was cut because he would have made Harry's life, as Rowling put it, too easy.
It's the core of the whole thing, isn't it? The struggle is everything. They have to be operating in the dark, making mistakes.
Guessing, following Dumbledore's cryptic clues, a reliable crystal ball just neutralizes all of it.
But I wonder, does that also make the magical world feel a little smaller? If the only truly successful seer we meet is Sybill Trelawney, let's be honest, mostly a theatrical eccentric who's only right twice.
Right.
Doesn't it feel like magic itself has to be nerfed just to make the plot work?
It absolutely does. But that's what good editing is in a story like this. Rowling made a choice. If the gift of sight exists, it has to be flawed. It has to be chaotic, or at least incredibly rare.
So the power of a magical ability is inversely proportional to the quality of the drama.
Perfectly put. So Mopsis didn't just disappear. His traits were very cleverly repurposed. They were spread out across other characters.
Okay, so who got what piece?
Well, the main gift of sight, obviously diluted and made incredibly unpredictable, went to Trelawney.
Right. She's entertaining, but you would never rely on her for, strategic war planning.
Never. And crucially, as you said, Rowling confirmed only 2 of her prophecies were ever real. The big one about Harry and Voldemort.
And the one in Prisoner of Azkaban about Wormtail returning to his master?
Exactly. Everything else is just noise. It's atmospheric.
Yeah.
And that ambiguity is what Mopsis would have completely destroyed.
And what about his other trait, the blindness?
That's the other clever part. The physical idea, the blind side, the magical vision replacing natural sight that was subtly given to Alastor Mad-Eye Moody.
Oh, of course. His magical eye gives him this literal but still imperfect insight into the world around him.
It's a visual parallel to what Mopsis did, but without breaking the plot. So this one character, Mopsis, who was just too strong, was dismantled, and his parts were used to create 2 much more useful, much more interesting supporting characters.
That's fascinating. Okay, so let's unpack another cut. This one involves a minor character who a lot of people really love, Florian Fortescue.
Florian Fortescue,
Yeah.
The Diagon Alley ice cream vendor.
We meet him in Prisoner of Azkaban, and he's just so kind to Harry. He helps him with his history of magic homework over the summer.
And that detail, the history expertise, that was not an accident. That was a specific narrative setup.
Because in Deathly Hallows, we just hear that he's gone missing, presumed killed, and it just feels like one of those sad casualties of war. But he was supposed to have a much bigger role.
A much, much bigger role. In the early drafts, Harry, Ron, and Hermione would have actually rescued him. He was meant to be a prisoner in Malfoy Manor, right alongside Ollivander and Luna and Dean Thomas.
And he was the key, right? He was supposed to use that historical knowledge from way back in Book 3 to help Harry find information about the Elder Wand?
The Elder Wand and Ravenclaw's lost diadem. He was going to be the historical key to finding two of the most important artifacts in the entire series.
So what happened? Why was that cut?
In the final version, that information came from two other, I guess you could say more source. Garrick Ollivander, the wand expert, gives the lore on the Elder.
Which makes perfect sense.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
And Xenophilius Lovegood, the Hallows fanatic, gives the lore on the diadem and the Hallows in general.
So Rowling herself later said she killed Fortescue unnecessarily. She regretted it. Why do you think that is? I mean, the final version sounds more efficient.
I think it's a mix of things. From a storytelling perspective, having a minor character you introduced early on come back and play a huge role in the finale, that's just deeply satisfying for a reader.
Oh, for sure. It's a great payoff.
So losing that arc is a loss. But you're right. Structurally, the final choice was way more efficient. Ollivander and Lovegood were already there. They were already part of the action. Folding the exposition into their roles just streamlined the whole thing. Cut out a whole other rescue and protection sequence.
It's that trade-off again, isn't it? You sacrifice a really satisfying character arc for pure plot momentum. Sometimes you just have to be brutal.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've seen cuts for plot, but sometimes a cut is made to protect the fundamental emotional core of the series, which brings us to the original opening chapter.
Right. The Muggle betrayal.
This is a wild one. The opening, we all know, The Boy Who Lived, is just, it's perfect.
Yeah.
It introduces the Dursleys, the anti-magic world, before Hagrid smashes it all to pieces.
That's perfect. But Rowling had tons of early drafts, and she said most of them gave away too much too soon. And in one of them, the entire reason for the tragedy was different.
Because the ultimate betrayal in the camp, Peter Pettigrew, one of James Potter's best, a trust.
It's a tragedy of broken friendship, of trust within the wizarding world, high drama. But in this early draft, the Potters were betrayed by an unnamed Muggle.
Just a random Muggle.
A random Muggle. And think about the difference in weight. Pettigrew's betrayal creates the entire plot of Prisoner of Azkaban. It explains Sirius Black's wrongful imprisonment. It fuels so much of Harry's journey.
A Muggle betrayal is just a plot. Pettigrew's betrayal is personal. It makes the war internal to the wizard in the very...
And this cut has huge ripple effect, because in that same draft, it gets even crazy. Hermione Granger's parents were good friends with the Potters.
What?
Yes, they were integrated into the magical world. They heard the explosion that night, and they were the ones who went to the ruins and found baby Harry.
That is a tectonic shift. So the Grangers weren't just random dentists who found out about magic through their daughter. They were already in the know.
Possibly allies of the Order, close enough to be there on the night it all happened, which would completely change Hermione's role.
Yeah, she wouldn't be the reader's proxy anymore. She's our way into this world because she's discovering it with us, if she already has this inherited connection.
It completely weakens that. Her wonder is our one. So by giving that role finding Harry, delivering him to the Dursleys, to Rubeus Hagrid.
Rowling made the perfect choice. Hagrid is this awe-inspiring, purely magical introduction for Harry and for the reader.
It personalizes the war, and it makes the magical world feel huge and mysterious right from the jump. One single choice in Chapter 1 defines the relationships for the entire series.
Wow. Speaking of families, let's talk about the Weasley. There was another cut that would have totally revolutionized how we Slytherin house.
The Slytherin Weasleys. This is one of my favorite what-ifs.
Because the Weasleys are so monolithically Gryffindor.
To their core. But in early drafts of Goblet of Fire, Ron was supposed to have an 11-year-old cousin. Her name was Mafalda. She was sorted into Slytherin.
And her lineage is really specific and important. She's not a Weasley by name.
No, she's Mafalda Prute, Prute being Molly Weasley's maid. Mafalda was the daughter of Molly Squibb, accountant cousin.
A squib, right. Born to a wizarding family, but with no magic.
So the Squibb cousin marries a Muggle, and their daughter Mafalda gets the magic back.
So she's this magical prodigy, but her immediate family is Muggle and Squibb, and she's a Pruitt, which connects her to
Fabian and Gideon Prute, Molly's brother, heroes who died fighting Death Eaters in the first.
So you have this girl tied to a blood trader family and Order of the Phoenix heroes, and she ends up in Slytherin. The contrast is incredible.
And her personality was meant to be difficult. She was unpleasant, academically brilliant, and a direct rival for Hermione.
I can just imagine the friction. Hermione versus an ambitious, spiteful Slytherin cousin who knows all the Weasley family drama.
But her main purpose was for the plot. She was going to be a spy for Harry, relaying information she overheard from the children of Death Eaters in the Slytherin common room.
Wait, so she would have been the only Slytherin actively, if maybe indirectly, helping Harry's side?
Yes, and that would have fundamentally challenged the idea that Slytherin is just the evil house. It would have forced Draco and the others to deal with a blood traitor right in their own common room.
So why cut her? She sounds amazing.
Rowling decided that Rita Skeeter was just a more effective, a more appropriate source of information for Harry in Goblet of Fire.
Because Rita's an outsider. Her information is unreliable, it's sensationalized, it creates more of a challenge for the trio.
Exactly. Mafalda's information would have been too pure, too direct, and integrating her into the Weasley family would have been a whole other subplot, so she was cut. The Weasleys stayed purely Gryffindor.
Simpler, but maybe less nuanced.
For sure.
That kind of family unity also comes up in another fascinating cut, this one involving the Dursleys. Let's talk about the Dursleys' magical life.
Dudley. We all know Dudley's arc. Starts as a monster, ends with that tiny, awkward moment of humanity with Harry.
Right. And in the canon, they have this strained adult relationship where they meet up once a year and just sit in silence.
Which feels very real, honestly. But in an earlier draft of the Deathly Hallows epilogue, his redemption arc was much more complete.
How so?
He was supposed to be there on Platform 9 and 34, dropping off his own Muggle-born child for their first year at Hogwarts.
No way!
Yes, a complete thematic loop. Dudley, who grew up hating and fearing magic, ends up having a magical child of his own.
Imagine the conversation he would have had to have with Vernon and Petunia, the thing they hate most, coming back through their own child.
It forces a final reckoning with all that bigotry, and it sets up this really interesting dynamic for the next generation, with Albus Potter having a Dursley cousin at school with him.
So why did she cut it? It sounds so powerful.
She said it felt a bit too neat, like forcing a happy ending that maybe wasn't fully earned, and that the awkward silent meetings were probably more true to life for a relationship that damn it.
That's a tough call. Realism versus a really satisfying fan. Okay, let's move to a cut that would have changed the emotional center of the entire story.
Arthur Weasley's fate. This one is heavy.
It really is. So, Arthur Weasley was originally supposed to die.
In Order of the Phoenix, when he's attacked by Nagini in the Department of Mystery, in the early draft, that attack was fatal.
In the book, he's severely injured, but he recovers. Why did she save him?
It was a very conscious decision. She realized that Arthur was one of the last truly good, stable father figures left in the entire story.
Especially after Sirius dies.
Exactly. And his death would have just shattered the Weasley family. It would have changed their entire dynamic, maybe for good.
Let's think about that. Molly would be a widow. The financial strain, the emotional strain, and what would it do to Ron?
It would crush him. He's already struggling with feeling inadequate. If his dad dies, he suddenly has to carry this immense burden of being the man of the house.
That could have created so much resentment towards Harry and the quest.
It could have broken their friendship. Saving Arthur preserved the warmth, the unity, that safe haven that the Weasleys represented.
But she was determined that a parent figure had to die around that time for the stakes of the war.
She was. So there was an exchange. She saved Arthur's life, but in his place, Remus Lupin was later killed during the Battle of Hogwarts.
Along with his wife, Tonks.
Yes, a devastating trade. But it keeps the consequences of the war incredibly high. And it creates Teddy Lupin, an orphan, which continues the cycle that Harry himself went through.
It connects the generations of sacrifice.
It does. And while Arthur survived, a Weasley did still die, Fred, and his death is just. It's arguably the most tragic in the series because it breaks that perfect twin unit.
It attacks the family's joy. But losing Arthur, the patriarch, that would have been a structural collapse.
The family and maybe the story might not have recovered from that level of bleakness.
Let's shift a bit now to cuts that would have really deepened the world building around our main trio, starting with Hermione, the missing.
Right, so canonically, Hermione is an only child, but Rowling originally planned for her to have a younger sister, a non-magical sister.
A non-witch sister. That immediately makes you think of Lily Potter and Petunia Dursley, doesn't it?
It's a direct parallel. The magical sibling who goes off to this amazing world, and the non-magical one who gets left behind.
And the potential for jealousy, for resentment.
It is. And Rowling apparently worked with this idea all the way through the first, second, maybe even the third book.
So why'd she disappear?
It was just a continuity problem. By the time she felt she needed to formally introduce this sister, she realized it was too late. Hermione had never mentioned her.
Right. To suddenly bring in a sister in book 4 would feel clunky. Like, where have you been?
Exactly. It would feel like a retcon. So she just let the idea go to protect the establishment.
And you have to think about Deathly Hallows. When Hermione wipes her parents' memory, adding a sister to that equation makes it so much more complicated.
Oh, absolutely. Do you wipe her memory too? Does she resent being abandoned? Keeping Hermione's Muggle family life simple made her decision clearer and her devotion to the wizarding world more absolute.
Okay, from siblings to faculty, the forgotten predator, Hogwarts vampire professor.
Yeah, this is a piece of very early lore. In a draft of Philosopher's Stone, Hogwarts was going to have a vampire professor named Trokar.
A vampire professor. That is a very different vibe for early.
A bit more gothic, for sure.
And, of course, it makes you think of that old fan theory that Snape was a vampire.
Because he's described like a large bat and all that. Yeah. But this character, Trokar, was real in the draft. He was cut because Rowling felt that vampires had already been so done in literature.
That's interesting. She felt she didn't have anything new to add to the lore.
Pretty much. She created her own unique lore for giants and dementors and house elves, but vampires felt too saturated. She felt like she'd be bringing in a century of other people's rules and baggage.
So she just decided to focus on her own.
Right, and so vampires were only ever referenced very lightly, like Sanguini at Slughorn's Christmas party. A little nod to their existence, but no deep mythology.
Makes sense. Okay, next up, a character who was always kind of there in the background but was meant for much more. The rival Slytherin, Theodore Nott.
Theodore Nott, minor Slytherin. His dad is a known Death Eater. A lot of fans think he's the unnamed Slytherin boy who can see Thestrals.
But he was planned to be a much bigger...
He was supposed to be an intellectual and social equal to Draco Malfoy. A proper rival, not just a goon like Crabbe and Goyle.
To give Slytherin some actual depth beyond just Draco's bullying.
Exactly. There was even a scene planned for Goblet of Fire where Theodore and his Death Eater father visit Malfoy Manor. It would have given us this amazing early glimpse into the internal politics of the Death Eaters.
Wow, that would have been incredible context. So why was it cut?
Pacing, probably, to keep the focus on the Triwizard Tournament. But the bigger issue came in Half-Blood Prince. Nott was supposed to be in the Slug Club.
Okay.
But this created a logic problem. Slughorn very pointedly avoids inviting Draco because his father is a known Death Eater, and Slughorn wants to avoid that kind of political danger.
Right. So inviting Theodore, whose father's also an active Death Eater...
It would be totally inconsistent. So Theodore's spot in the Slug Club was given to Blaise Zabini instead, and not just faded into the background. It's a great example of how one small change can cause these logical ripples through the story.
Okay, finally, let's talk about a character who really deserved more, and whose lost story is, I think, a perfect candidate for any new adaptation.
Dean Thomas's deeper arc.
Dean Thomas, he's a Gryffindor classmate. He's always there, but we know so little about him.
Incredibly little. He was originally planned to be a much bigger character on the level of Neville or Luna.
And we only get a hint of his backstory in Deathly Hallows when he's on the run because he can't prove his blood stat. He says he doesn't know if his father was a wizard.
In the early drafts, that ambiguity was solved with a really powerful, tragic story.
What was it?
It was confirmed his father was a wizard, and he left Dean and his Muggle mother during the First Wizarding War, but he didn't abandon them.
He left to protect them.
Exactly. He thought his absence, his magic, made them a target for Death Eater. So he left to draw fire away, and he was killed.
Oh, wow. That gives Dean one of the few Black characters in the books, the same kind of tragic, heroic backstory as Harry and Neville.
It connects him directly to the sacrifices of the First War. He's not just a classmate anymore. He's a child of the conflict, just like them.
And it doesn't contradict anything in the final books. It just fills in the gaps.
Perfectly. It just elaborates on that ambiguity, which is why everyone talks about this backstory as something that should absolutely be included in the new TV series.
It's fully formed lore that was just cut for space. It just immediately adds so much emotional depth to his character and to the world.
It really does.
That was a truly incredible look at the lost lore of Hogwarts. It really shows you how much thought went into every... If I had to pick the most impactful cut, for me, it's Mopsis, the overpowered seer who had to be, gutted and scattered just to save the mystery of the whole series.
And for me, it's got to be Mafalda Pruitt, the Slytherin Weasley. She would have completely changed the dynamics of the Weasley family and forced a much earlier, much more complicated conversation about what it means to be in Slytherin.
And of course, the near death of Arthur Weasley, a cut made purely to preserve that foundational father figure whose loss would have just broken the emotional core of...
These cuts really show you Rowling's mastery as an editor of her own work. She chose tension over easy answers with Mopsis. She chose efficiency over nice payoff with Fortescue. And she chose to protect the heart of the story by saving Arthur.
Every road not taken really did shape the final path.
It did.
So here's something for you to mull on. We know Arthur Weasley was saved to keep that good father figure in the story. But what if he had died? How would Ron's journey have changed? Would he have stayed Harry's loyal partner? Or would the huge burden of becoming the man of the house have pushed him down a different path? A darker, more resentful path, forcing him to choose between his family and his friend?
Go mull on that. And thank you for taking this deep dive with us.
Until next time.